Go ahead and start voting. I've got two questions for you before we start, and we'll do the introductions properly. Do you have too many projects? Right, that's the first question. Um, and then the second one is that my organization's leaders say everything is top priority. Now, I stole these questions from a guy called Dr. James Brown. And James is a real expert. If you're in the States, if you are in the States, you may well have heard of him. He's written some fabulous books on portfolio management, project management, all that kind of good stuff. And we did a webinar with him last summer while I was on vacation. I sat by the pool and did that one, Dan, if you remember. Um, and yeah, you could see what was above the screen, right? Um, so I stole these questions from. So there we go. I'm gonna end the poll there, just to get us started and share the results. And I think this is probably why we're here today, right? So 80% definitely have too many projects, right? Or and half of those are totally crushed. Um, and then interestingly, the question about everything is top priority. Only one of you has said that this is happening all the time. We hear this a lot, right? Where senior executives are always saying, yeah, everything's top priority, everything's number one. So most of you have kind of said that happens often, which I think is about right. So let's kill that off. My name's Stuart Easton. I'm the CEO and one of the founders here at Transparent Choice. I'm joined by Dan. You say hi, Dan.
Yeah, hi Dan.
There you go. That's it. Well done. Very literal. Thank you. We're going to take you. We're going to keep you captivated for the next hour or so, hopefully. We're going to have sort of two phases to this. I'm going to whiz through some slides just to give you an idea of the context. Why are we here? What is it that we're trying to talk about? What's the proposition? And then Dan's going to walk you through a demo. All right, so here's where we're going to start. We're going to start with a few slides. And before we jump into this, why should you listen to Transparent Choice? And the answer to that is reasonably simple, actually. We're a bunch of decision science and strategy geeks. We're all about strategy execution, and we really lean into the science and the research to tell us how to do it right. Okay, so this is really unusual because most people just make it up or they follow the old wives' tales that you find online. But we really use the decision science in how to make good decisions to drive great results. And the software, I'm not going to spend time on here because Dan's going to show you this, but it's taken us a decade to build the software, and it really is very, very powerful, used by some of the world's leading organizations. So in a nutshell, right, hopefully why we're all here, we talk about things like, we've got too many projects and all that kind of good stuff. But really what we're here, I think, is to help deliver more value to the business. So projects exist to deliver value to the business, right? In a nutshell, that's our jobs. Everybody on this call, that's our jobs, is to deliver value to the business. And our proposition is that good prioritization is the key that unlocks the ability to double the strategic value that you deliver to the business without any additional resources, right? So that's a pretty big claim, and round about now, people kind of go, "Yes, Stuart, you've lost contact with reality," but actually, no, absolutely not the case. This is a chap called Mike Hannon, and Mike is one of our partners. And the techniques I'm going to talk about today, Mike's been using for decades, right? Long before there was a Transparent Choice, long before there was all the AI magic that Dan's going to show you later on. And really all we've done is we've taken that wisdom, these techniques, and we've made them achievable for mortal people, right? So you no longer have to be this sort of theory of constraints, critical chain superhero that is Mike Hannon, right? And you can see the results on the left. I'm not going to read them to you. And every time I asked Mike to share case studies with me, right, he always shares case studies where he's got sort of a 5x improvement in the value delivery or the flow of projects. And he's like, Mike, you can't give me that. No one will believe that. Just give me one with a 2x. And even with that instruction, he has to give us ones where it's 2x growing to 3x in the second year. So this stuff really, really does work if you apply it. So coming back to the nutshell view, in a nutshell, we're going to talk about three themes. We're going to talk about reducing waste. We're going to talk about faster project delivery and how to rebalance between your portfolios. And people sometimes scratch their heads and go, what's project prioritization got to do with faster project delivery and quality and these things? Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. So let's start with waste. So PMI did some research and they found that in a typical portfolio, 20% of projects are so badly aligned with the goals of the organization that they should be stopped, right? That's a pretty good definition of waste. And you know, that's a real problem. That's sort of the obvious thing that we can talk about. Now, again, I think it was just about everybody said, yeah, we got too many projects. So 20% waste and we got too many projects. Gee, I'm sure if we put those two together, we could do something, right? And so, you know, most organizations are doing something to try and prioritize, right? But for some reason, it's not working. It's still giving us that 20% waste. And unless you're doing something different to what everybody else is doing, right? So everybody else is using the magic spreadsheet or the beauty contest or whatever it may be, right? So unless you're doing something fundamentally different to them, you've probably got that 20% waste as well, right? And we're going to look at how to fix that. And so everything that I'm going to say now is not Stuart's opinion, because my opinion is biased, right? This is actually based on the decision science into what works. Okay, so people have been using, you know, magic spreadsheets. You know, you pick some criteria, you bang them into a spreadsheet, and off we go. For years and years and years, that's what's given us 20% waste. But there are lots of other methods, much more scientific methods, for prioritizing projects. And as an example of some of the research, the University of New South Wales did a study. They looked at over 100 different methods for prioritizing projects. And they came to the conclusion that only two of them are suitable, was the word they used. Only two of them are suitable for use in complex organizations. And I think everybody on this call probably works for a complex organization. So those two methods, one is called DEA, Data Envelopment Analysis, and the other is called AHP. DEA is pretty hard to implement, it's pretty difficult, right? You want your PhD in decision science to make that one work. AHP, on the other hand, is pretty straightforward. And fundamentally, that's why we picked it and built it into the software, right? Because it works and because it's relatively straightforward to get your head around and to implement, certainly when you're using good software. All right. So I'm not going to dig into what AHP is and how it works. Dan's going to show you that. But at this stage, just there is a right way to prioritize in a complex organization, and it's called AHP, right? So always look for that. And the point about AHP is that it really helps drive strategic alignment, transparency, and buy-in. And that buy-in is absolutely critical. Buy-in from your leadership team, from your business stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So reducing waste, if we can prioritize properly, we can reduce that 20% waste down to, what, 5% or something? I don't know, pick a number, whatever you think is reasonable. But it's a huge saving. So let's talk about faster project delivery and quality of project delivery as well. So this data is AIPM data. You've probably seen it before. Basically what it says is half of the projects don't meet the original business goal, 60% are late, 60% are over budget, roughly, right? And do you know what? That's not good enough. So let's play the why game. Let's go and figure out why that is happening. So what organizations usually do is they look at these delays, cost overruns, and everything else, and they say, okay, this must be weak project execution. And so they go off and they start doing more training, more templates, more process. And as an industry, okay, you ready? Fingers on keyboards. I did tell you I would be doing this. So have a guess. Put it in the chat. How much you think we spend as an industry on PPM tools, on those project and portfolio management tools? Okay, have a guess. Go on, someone throw it out there. No Googling, by the way. Gosh, you guys are shy or something. Or you've forgotten how to type. Jump in there. Anyone? 3 billion euros. Nice guess, actually. That's pretty good guess. Pretty good guess. The actual number is about 7 to 8 billion dollars a year on PPM tools. And that market's been growing for the last few decades. But guess what's happened to project execution during success rates during that time? They're flat. So that's not solving the problem. It's not about more project management, more training, more templates, and more process in project execution. So weak execution, let's ask why. Well, when you dig into it, what you'll find is that your resources are overburdened, right? They're multitasking. When you multitask, when you're doing task switching, research has shown that you lose 30 to 40% of your capacity just to managing task switching, right? So that's like just taking 30% of your people and putting them on the shelf and saying, don't do any work, don't bother working, right? At the same time, you get resource contention and resources getting pulled off. You don't know where to deploy the resources, which introduces delay and confusion and all that kind of good stuff, right? So why does that happen? Well, it happens because we have too many projects. Why does that happen? Because our prioritization process is not effective. So the key takeaway from this is that if you want to improve the delays, cost overruns, project failure, you want to get more work done because we stop this task switching, then you have to fix the prioritization process. But that's just the beginning, right? Okay, so fingers on keyboards, please. Hydron, I'm hoping you'll get us started here, but hopefully others will join in as well. So why do we build roads? Why do we build roads? What's the point of building a road? To get from place to place. Stephanie, good answer. To get what from place to place? To get speeding, fine. Thanks, Alexander. Well, hopefully not tomorrow when you and I meet up. To get us to a defined place. People and goods. Well done, Stephanie. You nailed it. That's what we're looking for. Perfect. So we're trying to get people and goods from place to place. Often people will say, oh, we build roads to get cars from place to place. We don't. We build it to get people and goods from place to place. And so the people are like the value of the project that you're delivering. The cars are the projects, and the road, well, that's your resource constraint, right? So so we're going to look at what happens as we increase the utilization rate of our resources. Right? We're going to stay with this idea of resources for a minute. So when we have no projects, obviously, or when you've got no cars on the road, right, you deliver no value. Nobody gets to their endpoint. So what do? We add some people, we add some cars to the road. People get to the destination. We go, yeah, let's add more cars. So you add a few more cars and a few more cars and a few more cars. Eventually, let's say we get to 30%. Life is good. People are whizzing along. The cars are moving quickly. Everybody's happy. They're getting to the destination. And so we add more cars and more cars. And at some point around about here, I'm going to put my cup of tea down now so I don't spill it. But at some point around about here, the executive team jump up and they go, we've got a great idea, guys. Let's go for 100% utilization. You can't do better than 100% utilization. So we've got a phrase for 100% utilization of a road. Several phrases, actually. Finger time. Come on, who can come up with a phrase for 100% utilization of a road? What is 100% train track? Traffic jam. There we go. Stephanie's on fire today. Chaos. I like that one. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a traffic jam, gridlock, take your pick. Dan normally says the M25 at this point for any Brits in the audience. So this is what 100% utilization looks like. Now, how many people are getting to their destination right now? Again, I'm not being rhetorical. Jump on the keyboards. How many people are getting to the destination right now? Anyone? Very few. The ones at the front. Oh, that's nice, Cheryl. That's actually quite a nuanced answer. I like that one. Yeah, very few people are getting to the destination. And the same thing happens with projects, right? So if you don't have many projects, you're not utilized, you're not delivering much business value. So you add more, and then you add more, and something interesting happens around here. This is usually at about 80 or 85% utilization. Right, something really interesting happens. This is where you start getting that resource contention. You start, battling for people and capacity and everything else. And if you add more projects, you get more contention. You get more task switching. You get more fighting over resources. You get more confusion, more communication costs, trying to coordinate everything, and you actually get less and less value from your resources. And most organizations are over here, right? And I'm going to say that's somewhere around about 100%. We do see them where they've got the resources loaded up at sort of 120% pretty consistently. And those organizations, I can tell you, are hurting, not just because people are fed up, but because nothing's actually getting completed. So if this is where you are, right, where do we want to be? Well, the first thing is when you use AHP, you have a higher curve because we've got rid of all that waste, right? We've got rid of 20% waste. And where we want to be is on top of that curve, right? We want to be on top of the higher hill. And the challenge is that that's actually quite difficult to do. As a human being, that's quite difficult to figure out how to be on top of that higher curve, because it's not as simple as just saying which projects score the highest. It's about which combination of projects squeeze the most value out of the resources that we have, because you usually have, one or more different pools of budget. You typically have, several different resource pools, and those projects are all pulling from those resource pools in a different amount. So it's not just which projects are the highest value. It's how do we put the projects together to create a portfolio that delivers more value. And that's what we built some really cool AI that will simulate, thousands of portfolios hunting for the one that is going to deliver maximum value. And Dan will give you an idea what that looks like later on. So if you think about this, right, we've increased the value here hugely that you're able to deliver. Now, to make that happen, there's a bit of work. We'll talk about this later. You've got to change people and process and all that kind of good stuff. You don't just put software in and magic happens. But is it worth it? Absolutely, right? This is a huge win. So faster project delivery. There are a few other techniques we could talk about, but we don't have time today to cover them all. Staggering and things like that. But let's look at the third area that we talked about earlier, right? So we talked about reduce waste, prioritize, really simple, 20% waste, reduce it. Faster projects in that chart, the robot helped us double the flow of projects. And in our experience, that's more than achievable, right? Doubling that flow using top of the hill and a few other techniques. Rebalance your portfolio. This is one that people often don't realize they have the ability to do. So a typical portfolio that we look at, that we see will have, in our world, ducks represent projects, eggs represent business value, right? So you've got, most of your work is going on your keep the lights on, business as usual, mandatory projects. And only one duck is going towards moving your strategy forward. And if we could push the water level down a little bit, right, we can very quickly find ourselves doubling the business value. The green ducks are the ones that your business wants. They don't really care about the yellow ducks. That's just about keeping your business where it is. The green ones are the ones that allow you to move the business forward. They're the ones your executives are going to pat you on the back for. So the way we get there is we use this thing called the efficient frontier. So the way to think about this is it's showing you all your projects, and based on how much you spend on projects, it shows you how much value you get back. And so if we spend, this much, the gray line, then we get the green line. And then we do another gray line's worth, we get the orange arrow, right? The orange arrow is much smaller than the green one. Oh, that's interesting. We do that again and again, and you see we're into the area, into diminishing returns really quickly. So the challenge is that in most organizations, right, you've got, you're way out here on the right-hand side, you're on the diminishing returns part of the curve for your business as usual, keep the lights on type projects. So in this case, we're spending 10 ducks of projects, and we're getting 8 eggs worth of value. And the execs only care about eggs, right? Now, in our strategic business, we've only got 2 ducks left to deploy on moving the business forward, right? So that's a bit of a challenge. So here's an idea. Why don't we, let's see what happens if we kind of get rid of 2 ducks from here, right? So we free up 2 ducks, we lose half an egg. Will the business notice half an egg? Probably not in this particular, in the BAU, in the keep the lights on portfolio. But when you put those 2 ducks into the strategic portfolio, something amazing happens, right? We don't gain half an egg, we gain 2 eggs. And remember, these are the eggs the executives really want, right? These are the ones that are going to move you forward. So by rebalancing between your portfolios, you can actually massively increase the strategic return to the business. Okay, so coming back to the nutshell view, we've talked about waste reduction, faster projects, rebalancing your portfolio. But to do all of that, you have to have good prioritization, right? You can't rebalance if you don't have good prioritization. You can't put yourself on top of the hill if you don't understand what value means. You can't maximize value if you don't have a good measure of value. So good prioritization is absolutely critical to unlocking this doubling in the strategic return from your portfolio. We have some training materials which we'll send out. There'll be an email coming after this webinar with the recording and all the usual stuff. But in there, we'll also have a few links that you can use. There'll be one to book a meeting with us, which I strongly recommend you do. And we will help you build the business case, build the case for change. There's also a little course, little 6-video course. It takes less than an hour cumulatively, but we've broken it into 6 chunks, 6 little video mini course that'll walk you through how to achieve this doubling of ROI. If that's your way of learning, that's absolutely fantastic. We'll have an ultimate guide to prioritization, something about how to build criteria, a whole bunch of stuff will be coming your way that you can use to get started. And the impact that you can have from prioritization is so big that prioritization unlocks. It's so big, you really need to do that. So we're going to go and do a demo. Dan, I'm not going to make the silly joke this month. Do you want to talk about this, or shall I talk about this?
Yeah, I can talk about this. So this is the demo model we're going to take you through. Effectively, we've built a scenario where imagine there is a kind of IT representing business as usual and the business representing growth. So we're going to have 2 different portfolios. We'll focus on the business one, but the IT one is there in parallel. Next slide, please. Then we're going to sort of define the criteria, score the projects, and then start applying some of the AI capability around optimization. So we'll do some of the things Stuart talked about within each portfolio. And then we'll show you how actually we're going to apply a kind of corporate layer which sits on top, controls the resource, and then shares the resource between these pots. So it's trying to kind of play the arbitration role in distributing the constrained resource so both portfolios can perform well.
Great, thank you, Dan.
So do jump in. Stuart will answer all tricky questions. I will answer easy ones at the end. So the journey starts here in the Kanban. So I'm sure everyone knows what a Kanban is, and you know the reality here is that you're using a good decision as a process, and the Kanban is configurable, so you can create different steps in the process in order to help you automate, manage your data, and do lots of good things like that make it easier to manage, particularly if you've got a large portfolio with some scale. You can put projects into your portfolio with a big green button, with a connector to a project management tool for a batch import via Excel. So there's quite a lot of flexibility to how you feed it. It's very easy. So with a Kanban, that's bringing all the projects in. That's happening, remember, for both our IT and our sort of business as usual. We've got a request page option as well. So you've got a form, like a sort of front door for new work coming in. But of course, we talked about AHP and we talked about building a model. So this is the kind of the business one. And again, there is a parallel one for IT. I'll spare you the detail of both. And the idea is here, we're just trying to focus on what matters when you are committing resources to a business project for IT. So we say, well, what matters? Well, finance matters. So we've got, how much money is this going to make in the next 2 years? So quite a specific financial metric that we're going to track. And I'll show you how we're going to fill that with data. We've got some strategic criteria. So, softer things that are slightly more qualitative in terms of judgment-based, but they're critical to whether you fund a project. And they're the sort of things that someone will try and put into a spreadsheet and model by ROI. Really, the assumptions you have to make to turn this into a data point like that are so big that data is probably worthless. But they're really important ways of understanding what matters. Then you've got reliability risk. So this is delivery risk. So we're going to start to put a bit of a premium on risky projects. So we're recognizing that some projects are easier than others, and you probably want to go for the easier wins first. So these are our 3 components of our model, and these are the factors we want to consider when we fund a project. And very much kind of similar to, if you like, the pros and cons that you would probably have in a business case. And actually, that's how you get a lot of this data out of your organization. Look at the pros and cons, ask people what they want, and start to pull together this framework. There are a few rules about AHP, but it's not that complicated. You can tell it's not complicated because I wrote an ebook on it, so it must be pretty simple. And we can share that with anyone. Just put your hand up in the chat and we'll get it out to you. Now, we built a model, but as you know, all criteria are not created equal. And there's a critical step in the development of your model where you're going to get your executives to buy in to the shape of the model and the weights of the model. So what we do is we use a system called pairwise, which does pretty much what you imagine it would do, and it looks at the relative importance of the different criteria against each other and uses that relative preference to build, via some algorithmic maths built into the software, a scoring framework. But the key thing is, we're not going to do that sort of, sitting in a darkened room on our own, kind of, making numbers up that no one believes in. We're going to use that process to really bring people together. And the first point of alignment is aligning the executive group on what matters. Got a guest. Right, so we're going to get our group together. So here are our executives gathered, and then we're going to say, right, guys, what's more important? Is it the financial or is it the strategic? Which is more important to you? And actually, there might be some difference of opinions because different people come into work with different preconceptions, different roles, different lived experiences. And actually, what you want to do is get people talking to each other in order to get those differences into a place where you can reconcile them, learn from each other, and at the end of the day, generate an average that means you move on. And the point is, you go through this process, people get a chance to talk, a chance to listen, and at the end of it all, you get an outcome, and you get a model that we're going to be used to do all the good stuff that Stuart's talked about in terms of creating, if you like, a quantified, deliberate outcome for how you're going to manage your portfolio.
Yeah, this is where I come over all Homer Simpson and start going, ooh, donuts.
Yes, you can have a donut chart. Or a bar chart, if that's more your tipple. So you've got lots of good stuff there, and there's some nice UX built into the software, which is all about kind of having live meetings and stuff. Although I think I'll skip that, otherwise we'll be here all day, won't we, Stuart? So we do that. We've got a framework. Now, next, we're going to score our projects. And the point here is, again, we want to make this process a team sport. So we talk about the wisdom of the small crowd. And there's a truth that says one person coming up with a judgment is probably going to be wrong, even if they're smart, even if they're trying really hard. This is something the late Dan Kahneman wrote a book on called Noise, highly recommended. If you've got a couple of hours of free time. And it's really interesting. And it basically says, look, we're people, we get things wrong. We think one thing one day and one thing the next day, which is bad news if you're in front of a judge and he's having a bad day, proven by Mr. Kahneman. And similarly, we don't want a good project to fail because it's in front of someone on a bad day. And this is why we get people to work together as a group. And again, very similar UX to the weights. It's about asking different people what they think. It's about encouraging them to listen. It's about encouraging them to work together as a team and come up with a resolution. So what's the score for this particular project, for this particular criteria? So you're going through your model, scoring all your projects on all your criteria in order to come up with that outcome. And again, you'll see here, we believe this should be a team sport in terms of people working together on the answers, but also divide and conquer. So get your strategy people to do your strategy stuff, get your finance people to do your finance stuff. Avoid meetings where you're sat there for 3/4 of the time, listening, not really involved, because it is not your turn yet. So you're kind of structuring it and let the software do the work while you can and then aggregate the results together. So we're starting to build the outcome here. Now, I said I'd come back to where we're getting our data from, because of course we saw we had finance in there. Now we could estimate, how much is revenues is going to generate, and that's a totally good, legitimate solution if you just want a quick process. Ask the finance guys, how much is this worth? Is it really good? Well, meh. But actually, we've just put this functionality live at the moment around building a business case. So maybe you want a bit more precision than the estimate for that. And you want to come up with a neat little set of projections that say, actually, next year it's going to earn us 3 million, the year after 5 million. So you can start to really make this very specific. And actually, you can see here, you're starting to then get into the business planning space. And if anyone's seen the PMO Squad's latest survey, I do encourage you, go and find it. It's all over LinkedIn. They tell us that actually the best PMOs, the highest performing PMOs, tend to be the ones with a firm foot in strategic planning. So this could be a nice way of building that kind of relevance in the strategic planning space, because you're helping understand what the benefits are for the project. And while you're there, we're also going to start to collect that data on the requirements, because to do our modeling,
on the resources, Dan, you mean?
Yeah, so to do the modeling on the resources, we want to understand how much effort it's going to be. And again, we've defined some buckets here, and this is all configurable via that kind of corporate level we talked about at the beginning. So you define your benefits and you define your requirements, and then you put what those look like.
Resources,
yeah, over the course of the project. You can do the same, expenses, capex, etc. So in fact, each of your projects has now got its own little mini P&L that says, as soon as we begin, this is what will cost and this is what will deliver, i.e. a business case. So we've scored the qualitative criteria. We've got the business case filling the harder criteria for around finance. And now we have a score. So we come back to our efficient frontier, as shown by Stuart at the beginning. So I think he explains very well, but that it's the cost here, or the cumulative cost and the cumulative value. But the point is, it's not just data, it's data that people have been involved in creating. Because actually, all the scoring here either comes from a business case you built, or from a review that people have done as a group, and the weighting is done by the leadership. So if you're this project, you don't like being up in that corner or down here in another view, tough. People have bought into it. The process is robust. The process is fair. So what you'll find is, if the process isn't fair, if people don't really trust the data, then as soon as they're in the wrong quadrant, they'll come up with a reason why you're wrong. And again, so this is just putting real quantified value against all the projects that are competing for a finite number of resources. And again, once you've quantified the data, you can do fun things. Stuart, I've yielded to put a bubble chart in. Stuart knows I hate bubble charts, but I decided I'd put one in. So this is just showing you your delivery risk against your value score. So again, let's think of it in terms of riskiness. So maybe there's some real kind of big, expensive, risky projects. So we might think twice before biting on those, and maybe push them back a little bit. And you can see nice, colourful charts, dive into the data. You can always drill in, and a lot of this reporting as well, you can sort of push out through personalised dashboards. So, we're called TransparentChoice for a reason. We want to make this data open to the people who should be involved. So nobody is sitting there going, I don't know what status my project is at. Who knows? Because actually that sort of trust in the system is critical to its success. So we've got our our reporting. Now, if this was our demo a few months ago, we'd have stopped. We just said we've done a good job. Would have been in time, Stuart. But we're going to carry on because we built some new stuff and it's cool. So first, we're going to use an AI solution to optimize what's in our portfolio. Now, there are some constraints coming from corporate. I'll show you where when we get to that later. Trust me, they've arrived. And they're saying, okay, how many DBAs can you have? How many business analysts and so forth in order to maximize the value that you give us? Because actually, and again, we optimize with AI, it takes about a second, so it runs very quick. And then you get this really simple outcome that just says, look, here are the resource constraints you've put in. I'm going to just play with a genetic algorithm and try and come up with the best combination of projects that fit all these different constraints. And broadly, you're kind of heading up the efficient frontier, although it might switch a few things around if resource constraints kind of kick in on a particular project early. And the powerful thing.
And the really key thing here is that, so Cheryl, I think it was earlier on, was talking about, how do we get them to make good investment decisions based on our resource constraints, right? And what we've just done here, Cheryl, you probably didn't quite catch it because it was so quick, is in the background, the AI simulated a couple of thousand portfolios intelligently, hunting for the ones that would give the best results, right? So that took what, 5 seconds, 10 seconds?
Not very long, yeah.
So a human being could not do this, right? You can't do that as a person, but the machine can, right? AI can do this kind of stuff. And so this gets you into a position where instead of talking about, executives sitting there going, well, my project's better than your project, right? We get out of that story and we can go to them and say, well, look, with the current level of resources, I'm going to do some scribbling down. With our current level of resources, right, which are down here, we can deliver this much value. But then you could go off and you can create another scenario, and you can say, well, look at these two, right? We've pretty much used those two teams. So there we go. There's a scenario.
Hey, I was going to say, we've got one. Here's one I made out. So here's another scenario. So actually, I can't remember what the number was before, but it was smaller than that. And the idea is here, we've just opened up a little bit. So to Stuart's point about more eggs for this group, I've just reduced the constraints a little bit, said they can have some more, and allowed them to move a few of the projects over from the reject to the accepted list. Absolutely. And you can see which ones are moving, and therefore you can see the value of that realignment.
And so then you're having a proper grown-up conversation about, okay, what level of resourcing should we put into this? Is it worth expanding the team in this area? Can we shrink the team in that area? And will that give us more value or not? Right? So we're driving with data. We're out of this sort of playground thing of my project's better than yours. And we're into proper governance decisions that are focused on maximizing that return on investment from your portfolio.
And because this is algorithmic, it's not sort of crunching through spreadsheets manually. If you want to just have a quick look about what happens if you put in a bit more resource here and take away a bit here, you can do that really quickly. So you can start to sort of have some of that kind of budget planning very dynamically. So as you go into the kind of where should we put our 3% growth, you can be much more thoughtful and strategic rather than just giving everyone a bit or having the beauty parade where people ask for headcount. So we've optimized our portfolio. We're doing very well. And just to remind us, we have a parallel process going on with the IT portfolio. So again, slightly different criteria.
Dan, this would be a great place to jump in. So I got a private message asking, where do these criteria come from?
Okay. So these criteria broadly have come from my library of criteria. So I mentioned the ebook earlier, where we've got 80 sample criteria built up over our experience of working with clients and with decision science professionals.
So anybody that wants a copy of that ebook, just drop your details into the chat, and we'll pick it up tomorrow, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the ebook emailed off to you or access to it. And it talks about it's not just a list of things that you pick from. It also talks about how to go about thinking about building criteria. What is a criterion? What is not a criterion, right? And all of these things that people just kind of don't even think about. So if you want a copy of the book, just drop your details into the chat and we'll pick them up and off we go.
And the key
We'll
thing
get you
is
a copy.
that you don't need one size fits all. The software is designed to make life easy to split up and to have different models for different types of projects. Because nothing annoys people more than measuring their project with the wrong criteria, because they feel they're not getting measured properly and they're wasting their time. But yeah, these ones come out of a library that we built into the software. But actually, in reality, they should come from a consultation process where you talk to your leaders about what they want. So we've got our models, 2 of them now. So, and we've been through this process, and trust me, that the IT process has happened pretty much exactly the same. And there's value, of course, in having that kind of parallel structure, so that the 2 entities have a degree of independence, but they're both following the same process. So there's comparability and clarity. And I end up with, if you like, a scenario that it says, right, I could have multiple scenarios. This one, I've got plan A from the business and plan A from the IT. So they've both done their best to come up with a resource constrained project list of what they want. And I promised you earlier, I show you where the split comes from. So we've put in some constraints on our different teams. We said, right, how many people have we got in a given month? Can we hire? Do we expect some more? We're going to lose some. Roughly, what do we think we've got to play with? And then how are we going to split those up? Maybe we hold a little buffer back to put some kind of assurance into the plan, particularly around the critical constraint. So we allocate. Then we say, and again, this is another AI thing. I'm going to press the button. I might go and show you, run it again. And it's saying, okay, I'm going to go and look and find you a schedule. So you've told me how much resource I've got. Oh, and it's not quite managed yet, I know, because I've got slightly too many projects, but only slightly. But it's had 260,306 goes at doing its best. And it's effectively come up with start dates for everything that is a best fit against what I've asked it to achieve. If I go back to my resources, you can see I've got a tiny bit of friction at the back end of the year. So
this is where it's come up with the best option it can, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't quite manage to do it without anybody turning red. But to put this in context, right, each one of these resource pools has got about 50 FTEs, right? So if you're over by 0.1, you can probably manage that for a month.
Yeah. And the point is, we know in the real world it doesn't quite work as systematically as all this, and there's a degree of execution kind of, and so it's about making sure you're planning for success. So you've not got a huge bulge coming for one of your teams that you've got no solution for. So people are smart and they'll work around small bumps, and you can make this as safe or as stretchy as you think is appropriate to get that optimal flow.
So here's the key thing, right? By doing this, what you do, so the alternative to doing it with the AI is to get one of the high-end PPM tools and do what I call portfolio whack-a-mole, right? So you're dragging and dropping projects on a Gantt chart, and February's red, so you drag something and you fix February, but now July's broken. You drag something and so you fix July, but now January's broken, and you play whack-a-mole for a day, and you get something that kind of works. Well, the software played it. What was it, Dan? 300,000 times. In a minute.
In a couple of seconds. I can press the button live and everything, Stuart.
So it finds the best solution that you can find, pretty much, in a minute or two. Now, that's not important because it saves you time, right? And you're all sitting there going, yeah, it's going to save us loads of time. Yes, it is, but that's not why it's important. The reason it's important is that on day one, and Alexander, in the questions, you've just sort of nailed it, right? On day one, right, you've got estimates for your projects, what the duration will be and what resources you need. I guarantee those estimates are wrong and something will change. And so as those estimates get better and better as you're going into the project, you just update the estimates, and then you press the button again and you will get a refined, more accurate plan, right? So in in a traditional organization, it's just so hard to update that people don't in reality update the roadmap. This lets you keep the roadmap up to date. So the business doesn't get any surprises, right? Executives hate getting surprises, right? So the business doesn't get any surprises where something changes at the last minute. You're not overloading your people, you're maintaining. Remember, this balance between the work you're doing and the people you've got, as soon as you overload your people, your productivity drops off. So it's absolutely critical to keep your people productive in the productive zone, right?
And,
And that's what this is letting you do. That's why it's important.
and here our anticipation is there's that what you're doing is you're looking for the first, if you like, kind of cohort of projects to release after the initial planning session. And to Stuart's point, they'll come back, they'll firm up a bit, they'll become work in progress, you'll pin them in, and then you'll build, as you sort of complete work, you'll start to add the next wave. So it's sort of, it's not that you're definitely absolutely going to start disaster recovery in December, but that's the plan for now. So there's transparency and clarity to manage stakeholder expectations. And then there's a sense of, right, and as we get nearer the time, we'll know exactly what we've got room for.
Well, and Alexander makes a really interesting point here, or asks a good question about, what are the trigger points so the executives, because I think it was Cheryl early on sort of said, how do I get the execs, focused on the right decisions with the right resources, or something like that. Sorry, Cheryl, if I got it wrong, or if it wasn't you, in fact. But so he's asking about what are the key trigger points so the execs can focus on the right activities rather than on the details. And I think that's absolutely key. When you get that governance process right, that's what the execs do. Is they're focused on the policy. So, for example, defining what are the goals of the business, the OKRs that we want to deliver. What's the value we want to deliver as a business, right? The AHP process really helps them articulate that in a way that most executive teams find difficult, right? So it helps them clarify that. We did a webinar with one of our customers last week, and they talked about the executive team discovering their priorities, right? As what their goals were and the relative importance of those goals. I thought that was a really nice way of talking about it. And so that's one of the key trigger points, is helping the execs actually be really clear about that, and then be really clear about which projects are going to maximize the value, and then be really clear about which order we should do them to maximize the flow, and so on. Right. And be really clear about, are we getting the benefit, and what are we tracking towards a P&L projection of profit, because we're doing projects to help change, improve the performance of the business. So are they the right projects? So we're getting the execs focused there instead of being focused on the detail of the project. Your project manager should be doing that, and your PMO should be doing that, right? And maybe your exec sponsor within a project should be fixing those things. So you're only bubbling the big picture up to the leadership team.
And hopefully what you can see with the demo is some of those key intervention moments where your governance process should kick in. So if you want to start moving resource around between pods, that's a governance thing. Can you do it? If you want to start making those big calls as to how much you want to move from BAU over to growth, it's a governance thing. How should you do it? And also there's an element of focusing on the key margins, right? So if 80% of this is just common sense once you've done scoring, we'll focus on the 20% that where there's contention when you want to bring, if you like, leadership arbitration in. So we've almost done. The last bit, I think, was just going to pop up. We mentioned benefits. So these benefits are just looking at the financial, but you could look at other benefits as well. And there's a bit here about purposefully deciding what's the shape of your portfolio in terms of the benefits it will give business. And again, what in our experience the leaders really want, they want some surety in a sense of what they're going to get in terms of returns, particularly in a commercial organization. And of course, if you remember, we had that little mini P&L for each project, but now we've put this kind of 3D jigsaw set together. So we can see based on start dates when the benefits kick in. And therefore we get a sense of what is the portfolio going to deliver in terms of growth of the business. And that in turn can answer the question of, is it worth it? Is it delivering enough? Is the growth enough for the cost? And just again, to give the organization that sense of, yes, we know we've got our future in a good place. And of course, because we've done all the work around deliverability, we should be approaching this with more assurance that this isn't like, wacky numbers in a spreadsheet that someone's made up to get funding for their pet project. This should be a robust set of numbers where people are accountable for what they've put into the system, and therefore the chance of actually seeing it have increased dramatically.
So Stephanie asks an interesting question. Would this be able to tell you about how many resources you'd need to add for a certain scenario? Funnily enough, we've just gone through a process where that was exactly what they were doing. This particular customer really wasn't, they're not constrained, that, the high growth, high margin business, not constrained by the cost of people or anything like that. It was about what investments should they make to achieve their business, their compound annual growth rate of 15% in that particular case. And so what resources would they need? And then they could ask the question the other way around and say, is it realistic for us to be able to hire 120 of that type of resource, right?
Yeah. So here's the resource requirements. It spits out the bottom. And that tracker we saw before will tell you if you've got a delta on some constraints. So
absolutely. So before everybody disappears, I have really quick announcements. Announcement, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but a couple of fun things here. So the first thing is that so we covered a lot of stuff here around around how to double your ROI. Okay, we went over it really, really quickly. We've put together a little bit of it's a mini video course. It takes about, half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that to go through, spread over 6 videos. You can sign up for that little video course, do it in your own time, super easy, and it'll just give you more of an idea of what those steps look like. It's not meant to be a course that'll get you to the point where you can do it, but it's meant to get you to the point where you understand how the bits fit together in the context of delivering value from your PMO. And then the second thing is that a lot of the thinking, we've been working as a partner with Laura Barnard. If you don't know Laura and the PMO strategies team, you should definitely go and follow, go sign up for their podcasts and so on and so forth. But a lot of the thinking behind here is at least in part inspired by Laura and Mike Hannon and people like that, who are real experts in driving extra value from a portfolio. So basically turning the PMO into something that's not really about projects, but it's about delivering business value. And when you do that, you have a bigger impact on the organization. Guess what? You end up with a seat at the table and lots of other good things happen, right? Now, Laura's got a book coming out. And if you're into PMO stuff, you'll be seeing this a lot over the coming months. It's coming out in September. Next month, Laura, because she's a friend of the firm, she's agreed to do thanks, Dan. She's agreed to do a webinar with us where she's going to give us a sneak peek of the book. And there are 1 or 2 little offers around that book. This book I was one of the reviewers on the book. It's absolutely super, and it's almost a step-by-step guide on how to build a really high impact portfolio, PMO. And so anybody that books, gets your decision makers on a call with us, I will send you a copy of that book for free. We've pre-ordered a couple of 100 of them, and I will send you a copy of this book for free. So if you're interested in that, I recommend you sign up for the webinar, which is here. And of course, if you have any questions or you want to follow up with us and dig a little bit deeper, Dan's and my contact details are here, or just go to our website where you can book a meeting directly off the homepage. You can book if you book a demo session, you'll get a meeting with me or one of my team, where we will look at your environment, look at whether or not you're a candidate for this sort of doubling, whether or not this tool is an appropriate tool for you. We're really not the kind of organization that will just sell anything to anybody. We'll take our time and make sure that this is an appropriate fit for your business. And so that's usually the first step, is sort of thinking through that case for change. So thank you everybody for attending. Alexander asks, is there a webinar for the case of change? We have some videos recorded around that, and it's sort of embedded in some of those six lessons. But yeah, we should do a full-on webinar, Alexandra. Maybe we can draw on some of your expertise for that one. I know that's one of your hot buttons. So a million thanks to everybody. Really appreciate you joining, and do reach out, do connect on LinkedIn or connect directly. Go download take the course, sign up for the webinar next month, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you.